There are abandoned houses and ruined mills, and desolate cemeteries to which ghost stories naturally attach themselves. And the students of Bryn Mawr know the house with a chamber in which nobody can sleep because a red eye is watching all night from a corner. And the house with a boarded up room in which the grey lady walks, a quiet, unobtrusive, well-bred spectre. And the two-storey stone house at Glenwood that was built in 1753 and is so undoubtedly haunted that sensitive visitors, even as they approach it in the daytime, feel that they are being watched by something through the heart-shaped holes in the green shutters. The original occupant of this house was a Tory miller who sold to the revolutionary troops flour in which he had mixed powdered glass. His only reason for remaining about the place in these days is to protect the money he buried in his cellar before he himself was buried, his neighbours having considerately hanged him. It is reported that several persons who have attempted to explore that cellar have come to a quick and violent end. But no ghost of the neighbourhood is quite so creepy as the man with the skates. He was a young fellow, a collegian, who, while skylarking with his roommate, lost his temper and dealt a vicious crack on the other's head. His friend seized him by the throat and punished him with a terrible choking. People in a passion do not realize what strength they exert, and when the roommate relaxed his fingers, he was horrified to see the young man fall back, his eyes staring, his tongue thrust between his teeth, a livid mark about his neck. He shook him. There was no resistance. He called to him. There was no answer. He listened at his heart. There was no beating. The man was dead. The homicide's first impulse was to shout for help, to summon a doctor, but as he placed his hand on the knob of his door, he asked himself how he should explain those ghastly marks of murder. Murder! The blood of a fellow creature was on his hands. He cowered. He wept. He prayed, but the figure on the bed did not stir. He threw a towel over the face, but the lips seemed to move beneath it, the eyes to shine through, and he took it off again. How should he be rid of that accusing object? He went into the hall and listened. The house was still. A clock in a distant room struck 1. He went back to the dead man, put the stiffening body in an overcoat, gloves and hat, fastened skates on its feet and dragged it as quietly as he could down the stairs. But every now and then the skates would catch with a metallic click, and he would pause in an agony of fear to know if the sound had roused someone from his bed. He drew the body out of the house without being seen, however, and hauled it over the frozen earth to a pond often used for skating. The ice was thin. He broke a hole through it and cast in the body. Next day a search was made. The corpse was found in the pond, and the coroner's jury declared that death was caused by drowning. On the next night, soon after the clock had struck 1, there came to the ears of the sleepless man in the chamber where the killing had occurred a clinking sound on the stairs, and a chill coursed through him as he thought of the skates. The sound came nearer, and he could hear that it was caused by something dragging itself along the floor. The knob turned, but the door did not yield. Then, by the light of the lamp, without which he had not dared to stay in that room, The watcher saw two swollen hands in wet gloves clutch the edge of the transom, and heard something scrape along the door as the body lifted itself into sight. The man in bed pressed the quilt against his mouth to avoid a shriek of terror, for the face that glared through the transom was the face of the man he had killed. The body lowered itself, the skate-clogged feet shuffled through the hall, and there was silence. On the next night, the man found an excuse to change his room, but shortly after the stroke of the clock at 1, the same sounds were heard, and this time the drowned man entered and stood threatening above him. Then the bloated, dripping shape lumbered out of the apartment, and there was peace, that mockery of peace that has no rest. The man had a feeling that if he were visited for a third time, it would be his death night. Worn out with fear, remorse and sleeplessness, he went to the house of a friend and asked leave to lodge with him. In the morning he was dead, with finger marks on his throat. Some say that babbling crazily in his sleep, he disclosed his secret, and that the friend, in a sort of hypnotic frenzy, repeated the killing. Others believe that the drowned man returned in the small hours and avenged himself.